ス、男性を表し、月はメス、女性を表す。太陽と月が交わるということは雌雄同体、つまり完全な存在を表す。完全な存在って不老不死のことかな。もっとすごいもんじゃね？
I love this.
例えば神様。
Clever lads. Wow. Hey. Nice. Let's get to it. More airtime. Oh, stunning. But also, Ed equates the sun to, or sorry, yeah, the sun to the Philosopher's Stone, right? At one point. I believe in episode 26, inside of Gluttony. Oh.
みんな無事なのか？何があった？
ご苦労だった人柱氏。
Whoa.
やりやがったな。おう、手に入れたよ。
Whoa.
神よ。
賢者の石。まさか。じゃあもうみんな賢者の石に。
一体何人が犠牲に？
この国の人口はおよそ5000万人だ。やろう。
No. You just turned it off.
実は封じたよ。解き放ってみようか。ここで。お前が神とやらを手に入れた時から、すでに逆転劇は始まっているんだよ。
Go on, Hohenheim.
長い年月をかけ、計算に計算を重ね、この日のために俺の中の賢者の石を、仲間をこの国全土に配置しておいたのさ。
Oh, right. I mean, I remember that part, but now this is going to be.
我らに戻る体はもはやない。だがアメストリスの人々には戻るべき体がある。
そうね。彼らの魂。
Wow. Love this presentation of it.
ホエンハイムの頼みだし。
縁がなければ実は発動せん。錬金術の基本だ。
Hold on.
あるさ。俺にもしものことがあっても勝手に発動してくれる。とびきりでかくてパワーのあるやつがな。
The counter circle.
日食によって大地に落ちる月の影さ。
先に行くよ。ホエンハイム。
どうあっても邪魔をするか。ホエンハイム。そのためにここに来たんだよ。フラスコの中の小人。
I'll come to you, right? Oh. Ah. Oh.
なんて言うんだろう。こう。
To out of body experience?
苦しみの渦の中にいるような感じだった。
やったのか。
アメストリスの人々の魂がそれぞれの体へ帰った。元から持っていたセルクセス人の魂だけでは奴が神と呼ぶものを抑え込んでいられないだろう。
Right, right.
地の力の流れを読み利用するのは伝体術師のお箱。しかも向こうの力が大きければ大きいほどこちらが利用できる力も大きくなるんです。おじさま、その
Look at this. Oh.
てめえこの野郎気抜くんじゃねえぞ。
参ったねこりゃ。本当は親父だけどいいとこ見せたくなっちまうな。
早くしないと父さんの中の賢者の石が尽きる。
Yeah.
シュバルジンよ。
Oh wow. Everything's just.
物質の構築は万国の創造したる石原への冒涜ではなかったのか。神を捨てたのか。
Wow. Sakuga, baby. Let's go.
貴様らにとっ って神とは
Oh, yes.
所詮その程度の存在か。イシュバールの内乱で絶望を知った貴様は心のどこかで思っていたはず。神などこの世界のどこにもおらんと。
Oh, wow. Huh.
天運も神も信じていなかったが、こういうの天は我に味方せずとでも言うのかね。天は粋な客をよこしたものだ。祖父の敵討ちか。
言い残すことはないか。
ない。
悲しい人生だ。キングブラッドレー、貴様には愛する者はいなかったのか。貴様がホムンクルスだと知ったら。
舐めるなよ。あれは私が選んだ女だ。私とあれの間に遺言などいらん。王たる者の伴侶とはそういうものだ。
Fun, maybe
問答をしているうちに
something to have in
打
mind.
ち損ねたな、娘よ。
Oh,
用意されたレールの上の一生ではあったが、お前たち人間のおかげで、まあ多少やりごたえのある良い人生であったよ。
wow. Kind of passed on peacefully.
兄ちゃん、正直俺の中の憎しみは消えていない。なのにその憎しみの相手をアメストリスを助けようとしている。
Kind of redirect the
兄者は生の流れと負の流れと言ったが、矛盾したその両方を抱えている俺はどこへ流れていくのだろうか。
Here it is. Blue, of course.
じゃあな、見やがれ。偉そうにふんぞり返ってたやつの粉々だ。
That should change a few things now.
Fullmetal Alchemist.
Scar and Scar's brother. Come
今
on.
のは
Give him a
単
name,
術な
man.
のか。
いや、兄が作り出したものだ。兄は気づいたのだ。錬金術師はそれを十分に使い切れていないと。知覚エネルギーと術者の間に何か阻害する要素がある。
この国に入った時に感じた。
Right.
地下を人が這いずり回っているような感
The
覚。
big man down below.
おそらく国中の地下に張り巡らされた賢者の石。
The pipes.
スカーがやった逆転の錬成人はこの国の錬金術を正すものだ。国土錬成人の存在にたどり着いた。そこでそれをベースに練炭術で上書きし、賢者の石の力を無効にする逆転の錬成人を編み出した。これで賢者の石によって阻害されていた知覚エネルギーを
Yeah, now you're really about to tap in. It's insane the role Scar's brother is playing here.
賢者の石を使わせるんだ。いつかエネルギー切れを起こす。
いつかっていつだよ。
わからんがやるしかない。
Just go, keep at it. Greed's still here. Speak of the devil.
前の俺が入った風呂じゃねえか。おやつと入って。
ついでにあんたを安全なところに。
すまない。肝心な時に役に立たんとは。
He was a bit OP.
負けるんじゃないよ、エド。はい。
Is this the end for Pride as well? Perhaps? Everyone. Yes.
ゆっくりしてる場合じゃないのよ。大佐をお願い。怪我ですか、大佐。
目をやられた。注意。
君の傷の具合はどうだ。
またあなたはご自分の心配をなさってください。
ラーズ。そうか、死んだのか。
Interesting, right? Interesting.
満ち足りた顔しやがって。
Yeah, it was a peaceful passing. Again, Wrath passes on peacefully.
なんでお前らあんな父親に復讐してるんだ。
Go on, Pride.
つまらないことを聞きますね。生みの親に従うのは当たり前じゃないですか。なんでお前があいつの言いなりになってんのか。
I mean, that's his
お
pride.
前がそんなボロボロになってんのに気にも留めないんだぞ。
Ooh, that's gotta sting. Yeah, he
だ
just
から
left you
どう
behind.
したというのです。君たち人間の常識を私たちホムンクルスに当てはめないでください。この入れ物はもう持ちません。ですが父上と同じくオーレンハイムの血を引くあなたは我
Maybe I
らが
can.
兄弟も同然。
Uh,
エドワード・エルリック、私に入れ
oh
物は
my god.
肉体をよこしなさい。
いただけません。実にいただけませんね。
Oh! Kim Lee!
まさかの魂の暴風雨の中で自我を保っていられるわけが。
暴風笑わせないでいただきたい。
This is insane.
その声など私にとっては子守歌に等しい。あなたがホムンクルスの矜持を持ったまま戦っていれば何もしなかったのですがね。ホムンクルスの誇りだ矜持だとのたまっておきながら我が身に危険が訪れた途端下等生物と見下していた人間の入れ物に逃げ込もうとする。あなた美しくない。あなたはエドワード・エルリックを分かっていない。
自身を賢者の石にして
Whoa!
逆に私に侵入してくる。
Right. They set that up before.
やめろ。やめろ。
Huh. My job here is done. And Pride, in its final moments, thought of its parents.
お前の本体か。
Huh.
全部終わったらブラッドレー夫人に謝りに行かなきゃな。そこで待ってろよ、バカセリム。
Baka Salim. Okay, yeah. I mean, how thoroughly satisfying. I mean, I think that episode certainly deserves to be called phenomenal. I think it's an all-timer. Easily for this anime, of course, and then, of course, anime in general as well. It's an incredible episode. So much is kind of taking place at the same time. Such high stakes, of course, for each one of these situations, but so much is also being wrapped up as well. I mean, you know, I say goodbye to two iconic characters of this cast, of this anime. Two major players of this cast and the story altogether. You've got Pride, and then you've got Wrath as well. I mean, Scar looks to be injured. Of course, the outgoing Wrath, King Bradley, the Fuhrer, lands one final blow on Scar. My goodness. I mean, listen, yeah, they are so lucky that this is not him in his prime. It's insane the amount of punishment he's taking, yet still being a bit too much for Scar. He was besting Scar once again. He was. He's pushing him back. He had him on his back foot. He had him. He was going to kill Scar. Of course, you get that moment, right? I'll get to all of that. I kind of want to just focus on the episode as a whole and some of the payoff, some of the beautiful payoff in this episode. Again, like I said, thoroughly satisfying. And you know, one of the things that felt so thoroughly satisfying is the whole notion of the countermeasures against Father and his grand plans, right? And how they took decades of setup decades of planning, careful planning, you know, I calculated and I calculated and I calculated some more. And I'm speaking of Hohenheim, you know, playing his part, doing his part. And then to see all of that planning and setup come to fruition is so incredible. It's so fulfilling and it feels earned. It does, right? They took that approach of effectively and adequately setting it up, you know, throughout the anime, throughout the story, rather than kind of going for the more easier, the low-hanging fruit of perhaps a shocking moment, right? And then explain it later, kind of dump some of that exposition as it's happening. You know, sometimes you get that, right? You'll have a big moment happen, and it's meant to be a bit of a shocker or a surprise for the audience and some of the other, you know, characters that might be around. But then the one person who's in on it kind of begins to explain it, and then that's how you get the exposition on that. I feel confident in saying that everything I've seen here, and recently as well, because this is insane. This is over the span of a single day. And it's been going on for how long now? Episodes? I mean, it's got to be close to 10 episodes at this point, maybe even more. The Promised Day, it is some arc. It's such a massive undertaking, such an impressive undertaking to, you know, deliver it and present it in this manner. My goodness, and it's paying off. And then some. I mean, Arakawa, I have so much praise for Arakawa and her approach to storytelling. I mean, some of the storytelling present just in this one episode as well is just beautiful. So impressive. And, you know, honestly, once this wraps up, of course, not immediately, but maybe soon after in the near future, I am going to go and check out some of the other things she might have done. I think someone brought up that she's done something like a slice of life farming type storyline. Of course, I'll check it out, of course, because Arakawa has earned so much story trust from me. So much. And yeah, it's really quite applicable to this episode as well. Listen, maybe there are some moments that even if I do understand it and the mechanics are really, you know, established, regardless of the actual science behind it, it has been established. Everything that is happening here, yeah, it's been set up, it's been established, it's been kind of depicted or showcased in a different situation as well before, and now it's kind of being applied to some of these final moments throughout this final conflict, right? So on that front, I feel like most of these things that are happening are pretty airtight, right? Then it becomes, you know, I suppose a preference thing from that point on, you know, because again, maybe I should kind of specify, I'm kind of speaking of Ed kind of, once again, channeling his soul into a Philosopher's Stone, or using his soul as, or using his singular soul as a Philosopher's Stone, right? And kind of entering Pride's Philosopher's Stone in that form of energy, and then depleting or exhausting that Philosopher's Stone, much like how Dr. Marco does, right? The crazy thing is that feels like it was ages ago at this point. You know, I'm speaking of Dr. Marco doing that to Envy, and the fact that it does take Hohenheim decades and decades of calculations and setup, the countermeasures, that is, it feels so authentic and so realistic given the immense scale of this. Remember in the last episode I mentioned that the things that are going on down below almost feel inconsequential, or the things that came before in the big moment, right? As the dwarf opens the gate of the world and begins the process of striking down or absorbing God, Kami. Yeah, the scale is kind of mind-breaking at that point, right? So of course, to have countermeasures in place for something like that is going to require a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of people coming together. You know, the people he refers to as friends that are inside of him, inside of his Philosopher's Stone. You know, they play such a crucial role here. And the thing I love here is that they make the choice as well, you know? It's not as if Hohenheim's forcing them to do this, right? Hohenheim earned it. He earned their trust, their friendship, because he spent time. He respected them, and he got that respect back. Again, something that father or the dwarf in the flask was not capable of. It's not even a possibility he could think of entertaining, right? Again, his approach or his take on humanity ultimately just being the source of energy. I mean, he's more than happy to use them. He's more than happy to use them to kind of get his goals, to achieve his goals. But rather than being a part of all of this, right? All is one, one is all. He's always considered himself above it. But again, like I mentioned in the last episode, there is a humanity inside of him, within him. That is something he simply cannot escape, or it cannot escape. I mean, I should say he, right? He, like I mentioned, I don't want to repeat some of the same things from the last discussion. He comes from Hohenheim. This is possible because of Hohenheim, or his DNA, his blood, right? And they kind of lean into that aspect later on as well. Pride and Ed, they do kind of share, not some sort of relation. They kind of share a strong relation in that sense. They share blood, that's for sure, right? And of course, that was kind of the reason Ed is going to end up being a good container for Pride, if Pride was successful at that moment. But of course, it didn't happen, right? Because Kimblee steps in. My goodness, Kimblee, talk about a scene stealer. Even now, episodes after his potential death, though of course, quite effectively, they did set it up as quite ambiguous. That is he truly gone, right? Given how Pride is able to kind of maintain parts of, or elements, or skill sets of the people it absorbs, right? Be it gluttony, be it Kimblee, be it the gold tooth doctor assimilating his alchemic skills or skill set to perform human transmutation. That of course took a bit of a toll. So of course that plays a part in slowing down Pride. But even so, Pride was still going to take out Ed, right? Even then. So I love that at the end of the day, a lot of these foes or people that they do have to bring down, or forces of evil, though of course that's taking more of a simplistic approach. It's a bit more nuanced than that, the sins, though they are presented in that manner, of course. But like I said, there's a lot of nuance to these sins, or the characters of the sins. You see that it requires a combined effort. It requires a bit of help for many of them. Scar needed some help, some divine intervention, perhaps, right? I love that. The thing I love about that is, Wrath, such a great character, man. At that moment, even he got a chuckle out of that moment, or this incredible moment, perhaps even a miracle that transpired, right, to give Scar that opening. And this is all as he's really, really having a go at Scar, having digs at him, grilling him about his use of alchemy. Have you forsaken your god, Ishwala, right? Reminding him of his own beliefs. But I'll come back to that. I know I'm kind of dipping into all these different elements of the episode, and it's just that type of episode. But that being said, it's beautifully paced, isn't it? Though you see that it required some of that runtime from the opening. And I thought that was a beautiful approach as well. But yeah, my point about combined efforts, right? You see the combined effort through Hohenheim, his friends, as he calls them, the ones he ejected from his body, from his person, from his Philosopher's Stone. He is a Philosopher's Stone at the end of the day, right? In the shape of a human, where he was transformed into that. So it always comes back, right? You see all those moments throughout the anime. Every now and then they'll show Hohenheim just in a random spot, right? Just a random spot. It'll cut to him sometimes. Yeah, it's a lot of beautiful setup leading up to this incredible moment, right? And I love that they had so much respect for Hohenheim, right? Yes, like I mentioned, they do have agency in that moment, but they had so much respect for Hohenheim, and they understood the situation so much because of the respect Hohenheim showed them. And I suppose he had a long time to explain everything to them as well, right? Those ones specifically as well, because they play a major part, right? The points of the circle, and then of course the circle being provided by the shadow of the moon. Iconic moment, right? At this point, there's just a lot of incredible payoff, right? There's still a few things to discuss, but now it feels like everything that needed to be discussed, or, you know, the meat of it, it's kind of in the past now. It's kind of done now. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's still quite a bit to discuss now, and I'm sure there is going to be much more as well. But, you know, the main focus here at this point is the final conflict. And of course, a lot of action comes along with, you know, taking down the dwarf in the flask, whose new form, I suppose, is a younger Hohenheim, right? Though he was a bit more, I don't know, some of his features are actually a bit more feminine as well, right? You could even see a bit of older Ed, perhaps. But to me, it felt more like Hohenheim, because ultimately he was shaped after Hohenheim. But listen, you know, once again, I have pity. I do have pity for characters like Pride. I mean, somehow Arakawa made me feel pity for Pride as well at the end, because like I said a few episodes ago, maybe even 10 episodes ago at this point, who knows how long it was, but Pride is the one that just feels so nasty. Everything Pride does just felt so nasty, right? But here, in the final moments, you see, you know, Pride, again, kind of goes out in quite an embarrassing fashion, right? Takes quite a hit on its own pride. But still, I felt pity. I felt pity. And I have pity for the dwarf in the flask as well, because you can see that there is a lonely figure there, right? Yes, you know, the character itself doesn't change much. You know, it's essentially a flat character arc, but you get to learn quite a bit about that figure, dwarf in the flask, through the sins that are extracted from that figure, because they are his sins, right? They explain the person that he is. And again, really quite human. And then of course, that's, you know, one of the main reasons he wanted to extract all of that out of him. Things that kind of attach him to humanity, or his own inner humanity. And as much as he likes to disparage humanity, there is a humanity within him as well. There just is, right? It's something he cannot escape. But I get to see Pride in their true form, right? This tiny little pebble of a fetus, essentially, kind of reborn, or not reborn. Essentially, yeah, that's the true form. It begins in that form, and essentially that would have taken over Ed's body, or his mind or head, essentially, right? As the new container, if Kimberly didn't step in and interject. Clearly he was quite present this whole time. And I don't think Kimberly is just kind of sitting there hoping for Pride to slip up or anything. I think Kimberly is more than happy to just take it all in. That was his whole thing anyways. But then the moment Pride kind of gets desperate, that whole, you know, idea and notion of, you know, being above humans, that whole idea and notion of taking pride and honor in being this being that is above humans, it dissipates, goes out the window, right? And then some of that true nature kind of comes to the fore. And Kimberly's there. He's present. He's really quite present in there, right? I mean, of course, Pride is shocked by this, that he's able to maintain his individuality in there. But is it really a shocker to us, audience? If anyone, or one of the few who could manage that, Kimberly is one of them. The voices of resentment are like lullabies to me. That right there is one of the most iconic lines of dialogue in the entire story, in the entire anime. Coming from Kimberly, being in that situation, oh my goodness. The man's at home, right? He excels in that situation, right? He embraces the chaos and the misery. Now, to me, it's not really a surprise or a shock that Kimberly does turn on Pride for that reason, because I thought it was so effectively established the type of person he is, his ideals, his convictions, his beliefs. So that wasn't shocking to me. But I think for people that might not have been sold on his philosophy before this, I think this serves as such a great moment, right? That he does make the choice to step in. He didn't have to, but he does. Not to help Ed or anything, but more so because he's backing these people, or he decided that he's going to be in this corner because he wants to see the world they create. But then all of a sudden, this man, or not man, this homunculus, it's going back on everything it believes in. He hits hypocrisy, right? They've shown us time and time again, or at least on a few occasions, that he calls it out. Doesn't matter who it is, calls out Hawkeye, calls out Mustang, Hughes, all of the soldiers that are around at that point. This is an individual that can respect people that stick to their ideals, that do have that conviction, even if he doesn't agree, even if he thinks it's naive, right? It kind of goes back to that Briggs conversation as Ed is explaining his conviction to not kill. And that's one of the things I really loved about Kimbley, right? He doesn't, anytime, these different ideas are presented, different from his own ideals, it's not as if he brushes it aside. He engages in a conversation. He's legitimately interested in people's approach, right? The angle they might be coming from. Same thing happens out there, right? Al and Kimbley, middle of the fight. He's open to these conversations. He hears them out. Yes, ultimately he thinks maybe Al's a bit naive in that sense, but he's still kind of interested in having that conversation and getting that take from the Elric brothers, because he has a respect for the Elric brothers. He does, right? And then, of course, you see right at the end there, you do not understand Edward Elric. Speaking to Pride, of course. Kimbley certainly understands. But yeah, ultimately, an assist from Kimbley, his final act, essentially, because you see now his soul kind of moves on as well. It gives Ed that little bit of edge he needed. And I'm not really completely even sure how Kimbley kind of delayed Pride or, stops him from kind of functioning in that moment, but he did something. I mean, I suppose it's probably kind of similar to Ling and Greed, but here it's a bit different. Here you don't have people that are unified or two personalities that are unified or in harmony, right? So yeah, I suppose, yeah, it actually is really quite a bit similar, isn't it? Because on the other end, the Greeling example, they're in unison. But also, isn't it so fitting that Ed does go up against Pride, given his own, pride issues and his own hubris earlier on in the series? Of course, since then he has grown so much and set aside that pride of his that has kind of landed him in trouble before. I mean, that was one of the main reasons he goes on to perform human transmutation in the first place, right? On his mother. But yeah, I thought it was really quite fitting to pair them up in these final moments, much like how Scar and Wrath are paired up, right? Perfect. It really is quite perfect in that sense. And yeah, ultimately he doesn't kill Pride, and now kind of gives Salim, Baka Salim, I love that, a new chance at life, right? But I'm not sure if that fetus is going to maintain anything in relation to Pride the homunculus as it does grow up, right? Because if it is the same as Envy, yeah, that form, the little lizard thing, it maintained everything that is Envy as well. So yeah, it could be interesting. But I'm not sure if there's going to be any, focus on that aspect of it. I mean, it's just a few episodes left at this point. And there's far more important things that need to be focused on. Things such as Ed and Al potentially getting their bodies back. I know at this point it feels like, yes, this is it. And it is. It is the final conflict, taking down the dwarf in the flask. And yeah, I mean, it's just him by himself now. That being said, taking him down is still going to require something incredible, something quite special, a combined effort, especially now that they can tap into the full flow of their alchemy. So yeah, it's about to be, I'm sure, something quite spectacular in that sense. The fight sequences that might play out up top. Yeah. There's still that matter of their bodies, right? There's only a few episodes left, so it'll be interesting to see how they kind of get to that point. I mean, a lot can happen in just one episode's time, that's for sure. But still, at this point, I'm not seeing a clear-cut route, right? I mean, of course, they can get there, they can make it happen, but it's not as simple as, okay, yeah, they just have to do this, and then they can do that, and done and dusted. Good, they're back to normal. that in itself is also going to require something quite special. But yeah, Pride's final moments, there's flashes of the found family, or the fake family that was set up. But still, in those moments, this is one of the reasons I did feel pity for Pride. And the fact that he's in Celine Bradley's body or image kind of plays a part, for sure. Perhaps to signify that it didn't really grow or learn anything. Yet it maintained that boastful arrogance of an arrogant child, nonetheless, this whole time. But yeah, that quick flash of King Bradley, right? A sibling, essentially, but in this situation, a father figure or a semblance of family. He didn't think of father. He didn't think of the dwarf in the flask, because deep inside, it stung. It stung Pride, as Ed told him, or questioned him. How come you're so obedient? This obsessive obedience was actually quite baffling to Ed, right? And you see some of it's getting through. And it stings. It stings Ed. Sorry, not Ed. It stings Pride. Because, a part of him knows that, yeah, he's right. He's right. Father doesn't care about me truly. He just kind of abandoned me once I was used for my purpose. Though there is also an acceptance there. But like I just mentioned a few moments ago, even now, Father, the dwarf in the flask, is so formidable, right? Just the homunculi, Pride and Wrath, even being so depleted, are still far superior, or at least superior than their counterparts at that moment. Be it Scar, be it Ed, they could take them out if these really interesting little moments didn't happen. If it wasn't for combined efforts or miracles, even. So imagine Father, even in this depleted form of his, kind of returning to his initial form, just the 500 or 500,000 or so souls from Xerxes that are a part of him, right? But it puts into perspective, doesn't it? 50 million, about 100 times more than the amount of souls he had before. That was the scale. That was the immense scale of this. And, speaking of 50 million, oh my God, that segment, no sound. There's no need for any background score at that moment. It is so eerie, isn't it? It gives you chills to see all those lifeless bodies laid out. But then, of course, on the flip side, the return of the souls. Of course, the imagery itself is just beautiful. Really quite impactful as well. Again, that vortex or tornado of souls, and then returning to their respective bodies. Beautiful moment. And then, of course, the opening kicks in as well for that moment. Perfect. Right? That's how you do it. Use that time and still integrate the opening theme. And it is so perfect for that situation as well, right? That first moment as a baby cries or lets out that first cry after returning. Yeah, that's just beautiful. It's such a beautiful touch. And also, let's kind of focus a bit on Scar's brother and his lasting legacy. Ultimately, he's present through his brother Scar, right? Literally, of course, because of one of the arms that he gives up to his brother, but also in spirit, right? I just love these. I just love these types of relationships and characters having a lasting impact, a lasting legacy long after they're gone. And I've noticed these types of characters in a few of the other anime as well that I'm checking out at the moment. Be it Shingeki, be it Vinland Saga. There's characters that live on, right? Their spirit lives on through the people that are left behind. So I love that. I really do enjoy that type of approach to character dynamics and relationships. And you see just how much Scar's brother means to him, just how much, kind of reconnecting to his brother or with his brother and, his faith, perhaps, his origins or his roots, sorry. It just meant so much to him. Even so, he's still not completely sure about, his own direction in life, right? And even that is so realistic, isn't it? Because he admits, even now, I do have a bit of hatred inside of me. Yet here I am, helping this country. I mean, of course, from a certain angle, you can see that he does get vengeance, I suppose, even though he's not seeking it at that moment. But, it came nonetheless because he does end up taking out Wrath, the man that was in charge, the man. Listen, yeah, there might be someone else much more important behind Wrath, the dwarf in the flask, father, but still, they didn't know any of that. To them, this is the man who passed some of these orders, the genocide of Ishwal, right? So yeah, it really is quite symbolic as well that he does strike down Wrath, right? And earlier on in the series, he does refer to himself as the hand of God, right? Scar, that is. So yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff at play here. I mean, the fight sequence itself is just stunning. It's stunning, and it deserved the Sakuga, for sure. It certainly did. And I think Wrath deserved the Sakuga moment as well. And in those final moments, as he's really laying into Scar, really, really letting him have it, in terms of his beliefs, and his stance on God, Ishwala, right? It actually even reminds me of that flashback scene from, the Extermination of Ishwal episode, right? Those higher ups or the elders that come in, and he's really quite, really quite firm in his approach at that moment as well. He implores them, reminds them that if you do want to strike me down for these atrocities, do it with your own hands. Don't rely on any gods or Ishwala or any of that. And yeah, it's interesting. His stance on God, or the concept of God, a higher being, has been one of the more fascinating ones in the series, right? Even though he does kind of facilitate or help out or aid in his father figure, the dwarf in the flask, obtaining God or Kami. But even there, it's understandable because Wrath, or King Bradley, understood that, Father is trying to swallow God. He who would swallow God. I believe that was the title. It's a beautiful title. Wrath understands that Father is trying to be above God, right? He's using the God figure to excel to a different level. But you see that much like Kimberly, Wrath is also one that is not for hypocrisy. You see that actually brings out that wrath in him in this final encounter, right? As he's grilling Scar, having a go at him about his change of heart. But at that moment, as he's really finally about to perhaps strike down Scar, he's telling him, surely at some point, throughout the atrocities of Ishwal, you must have thought for a moment that there is no God. You must have questioned the existence of this Ishwala. But at that exact moment, something that could be considered the perfect being, God, right? Again, that cold open. I mean, I suppose it just kind of goes right into the episode anyways, right? But that flashback, Ed and Al as children, they're talking about how this could be considered the perfect being, God even. And you see, that quick moment, that quick flash that blinds him for a split second, that was the opening, right? The hand of God, perhaps. And I love that, King Bradley, or Wrath, takes it in his stride. Honestly, he does, doesn't he? And even in his final moments, he continues to be so impressive in expressing his emotions, his stance, his beliefs. I mean, he is just rock solid. Even then, everything felt so calculated, so deliberate from his end, right? And it didn't feel like he's putting on a show. Everything he's saying at that moment, he truly believes and feels. I mean, that's quite the send-off for Wrath. I mean, he's at peace. He's essentially content, and he's quite accepting of it all. There is an acceptance to his end, isn't there? The peaceful Wrath on his deathbed. How about that, right? And there's that moment as Greed kind of sees him. For a moment, there is this hint of sadness, isn't there? Because that's a sibling, that is his brother. But then almost immediately, he's annoyed that he looks so peaceful. And then, of course, he ages quite rapidly all of a sudden. I suppose the Philosopher's Stone was giving him or keeping up that appearance for him, right? Keeping him from truly aging or looking his actual age, because he has aged, right? And again, if this was a much younger Wrath, it would have been curtains for many of them already, right? But yeah, I thought it was a great send-off. I feel so satisfied. And also, Lan Fan picked up the Philosopher's Stone, so surely that's going to play a part in these next few episodes. But, ultimately she has secured Ling, young master's goal, I suppose, the offering that they really came for in the first place. But yeah, there's a lot of crazy things still at play. A lot of really important things still need to happen, take place, transpire. So, a Philosopher's Stone, yeah, let's see the role that Philosopher's Stone could potentially play here. But that being said, of course, Ed and Al are so against any use of the Philosopher's Stone. Like, they specifically are not open to using it. Yes, Al does end up using it. He does end up using it, and Ed doesn't know about that just yet. But that was a really unique and specific situation, right? Heinkel imploring him to use it, make use of it, to honor the souls, let them fight as well, because they want to fight. And yeah, he taps into it, and he does end up holding off two of them for a decent amount of time, right? Before they kind of get rescued by Yoki and they get out of there. And they end up in Central anyways. There could be a few more really interesting moments, dilemmas, a rock and a hard place type situation that I kind of talked about a long time ago at this point, I think. But I think Hohenheim is still around, so he's still going to play a massive role in many of the things that still need to play out. I mean, he's already done enough, right? He is, listen, let's celebrate Hohenheim. I love this dude so much. I love this character so much. I have so much love for his journey. I just have so much empathy for his struggles. Listen, this episode is full of just impactful imagery, a lot of striking shots that could be used as a thumbnail, but there's only one that I'm really thinking of using at this point. And also, some of them have spoilers. Some of the imagery that has Kimberly in it. There's some striking imagery there, and it could be beautiful as a thumbnail, right? But again, you can't be using that type of image as a thumbnail, because for someone who hasn't seen it, that is essentially a massive spoiler, right? The return of Kimberly in that moment. But for me, the standout moment, an important moment, a moment that feels so incredible, is of his boys, his two sons, stepping in and giving him that support. Physically, of course, and then the moral support as well, standing behind their father. And you see the shift in his demeanor almost immediately. You just see it and you feel just how much it meant to him. To me, that's one of the best moments of the entire series. It is one of the most emotional moments of the entire series. Yeah, I think it was so incredible. And, he deserved that. Hohenheim, he deserved that. His boys, and these are his impressive boys as well. He's seen the impressive young men both of them have gone on to become, right? He's so proud. He must be so proud. And they are so proud of their father, surely. I remember mentioning that at some point, perhaps near the conclusion of the series, Ed might change his tune, and that he might be so thankful and proud that he fought alongside his father, side by side, back to back. Yeah, Hohenheim. I just adore this character so much. I have quite a deep attachment to Hohenheim specifically, but I think I'll end it off on that note. I'm sure the conversation is going to continue into the next few episodes as well. I mean, all of it just feels like this a film essentially, right? It's not really like an episode by episode type setup anymore. It just feels like a much larger piece of media, just kind of split up into episodes at this point. So I'm excited for that to continue the discussion and to continue into the final few episodes of the series. So if you enjoyed this, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts, especially for this one, for sure, right? There's just so much at play here, right? Sometimes you have so many things you kind of want to talk about and kind of explore or discuss or analyze. But, you know, sometimes it just kind of escapes you at the moment. Ooh, also, that actually reminds me, I'm sure there is a significance, or there is something significant about Bradley's arms, or Wrath getting his arms ripped off. I'm sure there is some kind of reference there. So if there is something there in terms of a reference or a really specific type of punishment that might be mentioned somewhere else, let me know. Because it felt really quite distinct, really quite deliberate, right? To deliver that in that fashion or in that manner. But yeah, if you're interested in full length, timer-based full length, of course, or perhaps even early access to the next few episodes, the final few episodes at this point, consider checking out the Patreon page and potentially supporting the channel. The links are in the description and the pinned comment. Also links to social media, Twitter, Instagram, if that's your thing. Okay, thank you so much for joining me, folks, and thank you for your time, because time is precious. And this one is going to be a bit longer as well, so I thank you for sticking around and listening to my thoughts on it. And I do hope to see you again soon for the next episode. Until then, take it easy.